to all. I am Mridul on behalf of Care Ratings. Welcome you to our today's webinar on edible oil. We sincerely appreciate your time in joining us for this webinar and apologize for the 4-minute delay. We are fortunate to assemble our esteemed speakers for today. Dear sirs, thank you and welcome. I would like to inform that we'll be having a Q&A session at the end of the panel discussion. Meanwhile, you can please key in your queries in the slot provided. Now may I invite Richa Bagaria, Senior Manager, who is also a Sector Head of Edible Oil at Care Ratings. She's based off a Calcutta office to take over the proceedings, please.
Thank you, Madhul. Good evening, everyone. A very warm welcome to all the participants to this webinar by CARE and to our guest panelists for taking their time out for this webinar. I am joined in by my colleague, Mr. Arindam Saha, who is an Associate Director at CARE Ratings. I have the honor of introducing our first guest today, Mr. Anshu Malik. He will be joining in a while. Mr. Malik is a Deputy Chief Executive Officer at Adani Wilmar Limited. He leads the operations of sales and marketing there. Thank you, sir. Our next guest speaker for the evening is Mr. Darpan Vashishta. He is the Finance Director of India Operations at Akamani Private Limited. He has over 2 decades of experience in finance, IT, SCM, and general management with premier companies. Thank you, sir, for joining.
Welcome both of the speakers to the webinar, Mr. Malik and Mr. Vashishta.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for inviting.
Yeah, we will begin with the webinar with a presentation on the industry by both of us, followed by panel discussion with our guest speakers, and we will take questions from participants in the end. Over to you, Arindam.
Thank you, Richa. Today, the presentation which we are going to make will be, the flow will be as it is, that first of all, we will be doing the demand side analysis, followed by the supply side, including trend in production and import of edible oils, followed by factors leading to high import dependency, then regulatory measures to support domestic edible oil output, ratings perspective and disbursement, and impact of COVID-19 and outlook. Next.
Mr. Malik has joined. Welcome, sir.
Next, Richa. Richa, next slide. So first of all, let us see the demand side analysis, and in the demand side we see that the domestic demand for edible oil is driven by increase in the population, increase in the per capita income, and increase in per capita consumption, which in turn would be driven by changing lifestyle, increasing proportion of middle class population, and steadily rising affluence level. So these are the demand drivers which is driving the demand for the edible oil. Now, if we see the consumption pattern, the consumption which was in 2014-15 was 23.6 million ton, which has touched to 25 million ton in 18-19. So though the rate is slow, but it is increasing from 23.6 to 25 within a period of 5 years. Now, if we see the domestic per capita consumption vis-a-vis the global average, we see that though the consumption per capita has increased from 16.2 to 19.5, but still we are below the global average of 29.3. So there is enough scope of demand in the future, and the consumption also will be rising in the future, because if you are to meet to equate with the global average, then the consumption will be more than 30 million ton in the future. Next. Now, after analyzing the demand, then we go to the supply side analysis, including trend in production and import of edible oils. Now, we should first give the overview on availability of edible oil in India. So total availability during oil year 18-19 is 25 million tons. Out of that, majority is imported, 14.9 million ton is imported. And while looking at the domestic availability of edible oil, we have seen that 2014-15 it was 9.2, and 2018-19 it is 10.1. So but virtually the domestic availability of edible oil is constant and is hovering around 9 to 10 billion tons. Next. Next. Now, what is the edible oil import trend? We see that for the past 5 years consecutively, the import is 60% of the total domestic consumption. In 2014-15, we see it's 61%, and 2018-19, it is also 60%. So the import dependency continues for the 5 consecutive years, and even it is higher, and it's highest of all the oil-consuming countries. If you compare with China, China is having a 30% dependence import, and European Union 28 is having 42% dependence, and US is having 32% dependence. But ours is 60%. So definitely we are more dependent on import for to meet the domestic consumption. Now going to the variety-wise vegetable oil, what we produce domestically. Domestically, our oil production is divided into 2 parts. One is primary source, another is secondary source. Primary source consists of 9 oil seeds, and secondary source consists of 6 oil seeds. Primary source contributed to 65.2% of the edible oil consumption domestic production, and 34.8 is the secondary. Now mustard is 26.1%, and then 21.9% is the soybean, and followed by groundnut 15.8. These are the major oil seeds which are crushed in the domestic oil. Next. Next. Variety wise, now whatever we are importing, we have told that 14.9 million ton is the total import. Now what are the composition of the oil which we import? We see that the major import is the palm oil. Palm oil, one part is crude palm oil we import, and refined bleach and deodorized we import. So if we club together the palm oil under one segment, then 62% is the palm oil import, followed by soybean oil, and then 16% is the sunflower oil. So composition wise, palm oil is the lion's share of the import. And for country wise edible oil import, we see that majority import is coming from Indonesia and Malaysia. Last year Malaysia was 26.6% and 32.2 is Indonesia, whatever, but followed by Argentina, Ukraine is the next. Now factors what are leading to high import dependency, why we are highly dependent on that. So the answer is definitely the contrary, that we have a domestic stagnant production, which we are discussing about it. But why the domestic production is not increasing? So we are trying to find the root causes. The root causes is stagnant area under cultivation is there, marginal improvement in the crop yield. So yield is not improving at the rate which is desired, and the low seed replacement rate, and the lower level of mechanization of farm activities. So these are the root causes which is not improving the oil seed. Basically, if we go to the back 1990s and 1995, whatever we have achieved, after that we could not achieve more than what we have achieved in 1995 to 90 to 95. So our production, domestic production, remained stagnant, and these are the majority factors which are responsible for the domestic stagnant production. Now the stagnant area under cultivation, we see for the last 10 years we have taken, and it is hovering around on 27 million hectare. There is no appreciable significant increase in the area. So first of all, first and foremost of the agriculture, that the area is not increased. So if the area is not increased, so the crop domestic production is likely not to increase unless and until there are other yield and others improved. So the stagnant area under cultivation is one of the major factor which is prohibiting for a better and higher domestic production. And now we go to the yield. In the yield also we have not achieved much, because in the yield we see that the yield was 1193 kg per hectare in 2010-11, which is now 1237 kgs per hectare. So 44 kg only yield has improved within a span of 10 years. So it has improved, but it has not improved to a significant extent, so that our dependency on import is reduced. And we see the world, at the same time we see the world oil seeds production, which is 2.2, increasing at a CAGR of 2.2%, and whereas our domestic oil seed production is below 1, it is at more or less 0.28 CAGR. So there is a huge difference, that while the world is producing at a 2.2% CAGR rate, we are producing much lesser than that, but we are the third largest oil consuming countries. So the dependence on import is increased due to this reason also. Next. Next. And another is that these are something like the practices which we agricultural practices, that the low seed replacement. The low seed is generally we depend on the farm safe seeds. So we do not replace the seeds, and we do not use the quality seeds or certified seeds. So what is happening here is that 15% of the India's total crop area is shown with the freshly obtained quality seeds. So therefore achievement of optimal SRR or seed replacement ratio is imperative for better yields. Otherwise we will not be able to achieve our domestic production and increase our domestic production. Another is that the mechanization, there is a direct relationship with mechanization and agriculture productivity. The more the mechanization is there, the productivity is also higher. But here we see that India's mechanization is 40%, whereas USA, Western Europe are 95% mechanization. So these are all the stumbling blocks which are actually prohibiting us for increasing the domestic production. Now, so when our domestic production is constant and when our consumption is increasing, so every incremental consumption is to be met out of import only. So what is the consequences? Consequences is outflow of the foreign exchange. So every year, if you see that average, you can say 70,000 crore or forex outgo is there. Definitely in 2016-17 it's slightly higher, and some figures are also lower in 18-19. So these are due to the lower import or import volume differences and also exchange fluctuations. This year definitely it will be slightly lower, the forex, because of the likely lower palm oil import because of the HoReCa segment impact. So some 1.5 to 2 million if it is lower, not imported. So import bill will be slightly thinner. So now next is regulatory measures to support domestic edible oil output. Richa will take over from here for the balanced presentation.
Thank you, Arnav.
Over to Richa.
Yeah. The edible oil import is affected by the frequent duty structure changes done by the importing and exporting countries' government to protect their domestic industries. The price differential for carrying out refining operations in India depend upon the export duty levied by the exporters on crude palm oil and refined palm oil, and the import duty on the same by India. This duty differential should be large enough to absorb the variable costs of carrying out refining operation. The duty differential between crude and refined palm oil has reduced from 10% to 7.5% with effect from January 1, 2020. However, the refined palm oil import has been put under restricted category, which has kept the import of refined palm oil low, despite duty differential. The chart depicts the history of revision in the import duty rates of the various oil that we import. So to analyze the impact of duty differential on import, we can see between January to August 2019, the import of refined palm oil increased due to reduction in import duty differential for Malaysia, while that for Indonesia remained 10%. So Malaysia had pushed its product in the country, taking advantage of the lower duty differential. For the period November 2019 to August 2020, the share of refined oil in imports fell to 4%, vis-a-vis 19% earlier, after increasing to 18% in 2018-19. The higher share of crude edible oils in import is helping the domestic oil refineries to increase their capacity utilization. We see the trend of share of refined and crude oil in total imports in this graph. It has been in the range of 81 to 88% over the last 5 years, and it has increased significantly to 96% in current year because of restrictions on import of palm oil that we will cover later. Other factor that affects that is taken by the government to improve the to support the domestic edible oil production is the MSP. The government fixes MSP in regular intervals, which is increased over the years to incentivize the farmers so that they take up they get interest in sowing such seeds. So if you see in the chart for groundnut, sunflower, soybean, sesame, nigar seed, rapeseed, safflower. So these crops, the MSP has been increased over the years to incentivize the farmers. So what can be the broad strategies to reduce the import dependency? It could be by increasing productivity or expanding area under oilseed cultivation, promoting palm oil cultivation, creating a fund for the same, providing remunerative MSP to the farmers to incentivize them. And most important is the National Mission on Oilseeds, which can have a large impact on improving the productivity, on improving the domestic production. So now we come to the ratings perspective and dispersion. So this slide covers the key risk factors for players operating in this industry. The players are generally exposed to foreign currency risk, regulatory risk. This is because of high dependence on import that we have discussed, price volatility risk, and agroclimatic risk. Being an agro-based commodity, the industry players are exposed to agroclimatic risk. Then we come to the key factors from the rating perspective. What CARE sees in order to get a perspective of the company. Scale of operation vis-a-vis the presence in the industry is analyzed. Large size generally implies benefits like economies of scale and ability to access different markets against small size entities. So large size entities is a credit positive. The operating margins of edible oil refiners are generally low, owing to low value addition involved in the business. So the rating also factors in the stability, the past trend of the operating margin. The product portfolio is also analyzed. The more diversified, the more value-added products in the basket is viewed favorably. Financial leverage, the lower the debt, the better it is. Better financial flexibility with the organization. That lower leverage is viewed favorably by the rating agencies. The liquidity position. Liquidity risk assessment is an integral part of risk analysis. Liquidity in the form of unencumbered liquid investment on a constant basis or unutilized line of credit from banks or any liquidity support from any group entity, etc., are viewed favorably by the rating. The geographical presence is also analyzed. The higher the more geographical diversification is there, the better from the rating perspective. Regional players are generally viewed negatively. If we analyze the rating dispersion of the CARE-rated edible oil players, we can see 14% of the players are in A band, 38% in BBB, and the balance are in non-investment grade ratings. So, A-rated clients generally have large scale of operations, strong parentage, tie up with large international edible oil players, etc. Apart from the parentage, they have strong brand value, diversified product portfolio, port-based facilities, and wide and established distribution network. The players in the BBB category are medium-sized players generally having regional presence, with focus in few product categories, wherein they sell in bulk as well as under their brand name. Speculative grade or non-investment grade players are small-sized solvent extractors or refiners with single product portfolio, no major brand presence, and they face intense competition with other local players. They have weak credit risk profile, limited geographical presence, and distribution network. So let us see the impact of COVID-19. First, to understand the impact of COVID-19 on the edible oil industry, let us first focus on what are the behavioral changes of consumers due to the pandemic. Since March 2020, we have seen significant decline in marriage celebrations, social gathering, cinema outings, festival celebrations, tour, travel, and discretionary spending. Out-of-home food consumption has also witnessed significant decline. Shift to work-from-home culture is also one of the important fallouts of the pandemic. We also see a shift towards packaged food with growing awareness of hygiene. On the backdrop of the changes in the behavioral pattern of consumers, we can now move on to see how the same has affected the consumption of various edible oil. Palm oil in particular was the worst impacted due to muted demand from bulk consumers, mainly HoReCa, whereas sunflower and soybean witnessed a spurt in demand as at-home consumption of food increased during lockdown. Moreover, refined palm oil was placed under restricted category, which led to drastic reduction in its import to India from 0.4 million tons during November 2019 to August 2020 from 2.4 million tons during the same period last year, which can be seen in the graph. There is a decline by 84% of RBD palm oil import, whereas soybean and sunflower oil import has increased by 14% and 11% respectively. Last year, Malaysia had shipped excessive RBD palm oil, taking advantage of lower duty concession compared to Indonesia. So let us now see how the edible oil prices have behaved post November 2019. The upward trend in the international price of palm oil from November 2019 to January 2020 witnessed a sharp fall of 28% from January to May of current oil year. Trade restrictions imposed on import of refined palm oil by India, the largest palm oil importing nation, in January 2020 and weak global demand, largely owing to COVID-19, adversely impacted the price. It nevertheless improved by 17% on a sequential basis from June 2020 to August 2020. Gradual easing of lockdown measures across the globe and decreasing supply chain disruptions are believed to have supported the growth in price. The domestic crude palm oil price moved in accordance with the international price, which can be seen in the graph. Both the prices have shown a similar trend of upside and then declining during March, April, and May, and then again moving up. Also, improvement in domestic crude palm oil price was witnessed from June 2020 to August 2020, in line with the international palm oil price. Similar trend in price of soybean oil can also be seen. So, overall outlook, if we discuss the demand, even while lockdown restrictions are eased, consumption from bulk consumers major segment continues to face challenges as home deliveries and takeaway are preferred over dining at restaurants by some consumers. Further, restrictions on social gatherings is also affecting demand of edible oils. Reduced out-of-home consumption will result in slower revival in consumption. These factors will continue to keep the consumption level of edible oils low in the country. Consequently, import is expected to degrow by at least 10% in oil year 2019-20, after which there will be gradual recovery from 2020-21. It is expected that gradual relaxations of restrictions will support the recovery in demand, but it will take time to reach the pre-COVID levels. So we can now begin with the panel discussion. Over to you, Arindam.
Thank you, Diksha. So far, this is the end of the presentation. Now we would like to understand the current scenario of edible oil industry and outlook from our industry experts. So may I invite Mr. Ansu Malik first and then Mr. Darpan Vasishta. Mr. Ansu Malik, please. Sir, we can't.
Sir, we can't.
You may be in mute. You may be in mute. Yes, sir.
Unmuted. Is it okay?
Yes. It's okay, sir.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. It's a pleasure for me to be here. Adani Wilmar, as you are aware, is there in edible oil since last 20 years. You have done a very good presentation. In fact, I was engrossed in going through it.
Thank you, sir.
As you have rightly pointed out, around 65% is imported and 35% is domestic. Any country having such large bias towards import is not secured, and India is a big country. We cannot afford to have 65. In fact, it was 70% almost imported. So government of late has started thinking of it, and there has been a lot of constructive discussion with industry and government. I would tell you, first thing is that in India, the domestic crop that you have seen is divided between only three oil, which is mustard, groundnut, and soybean. Now, groundnut, as you know, although it has 40% oil content, but it is mostly, we call it as a dry fruit oil seed. It is more used as a table peanut rather than for table purpose, rather than for oil purpose. The margins in snack food industry is much higher than in crushing it and making oil out of it. This year, the restaurants, bars in Mumbai are closed. That is why groundnut is not so costly. But let me tell you, once these bars open, we have seen groundnut is sucked in there because they consume more groundnut than what we can imagine. So groundnut, we always think, is not a very primary source of oil. And slowly in India, the demand for groundnut has come down drastically. It is now only a little bit of Gujarat, little Rajasthan, and little Mumbai area which consumes groundnut. Otherwise, refined groundnut also is now not being widely used because of the price and inconsistency, and second, the quality. The second is the soybean oil. Soybean has only 17.5% oil content. So the moment you crush soybean, the problem is not in oil. The problem is in meal and what you do with the meal, because the meal is consumed mostly by the poultry and the fisheries. Now, you know, poultry is very vulnerable. Little bit of WhatsApp message that in COVID, don't eat chicken. The chicken prices slashed from 200 to 50 rupees. The poor poultry farmer had got nothing else to do. He's just open to all these hits. So poultry industry, we have seen bird flu, one or the other problem coming in poultry industry. So taking away the soya, DOC or the meal for food, for them feed is difficult, and so soybean, even if you grow more, you will have a problem. Second, India is not competitive worldwide for meal. So even if we want to export meal, we have to compete with Argentina, Brazil, where we cannot compete in terms of price. So, and we depend on export of meal. Otherwise, you can't consume so much meal in India. Third crop is mustard. This is the only crop which can save India because it has 40% oil content and is grown widely in Punjab, in Rajasthan, UP and all this, and substantial chunk of it is consumed in India as edible oil, nothing other than that. Now, Rajasthan and UP is already doing well. Nothing more can be expected. Little bit of additional 5%, 7% or 10% acre. This year, it's around 5% increase in acreage. This is possible, but not great. What big things can happen in India is contribution from Punjab and Haryana. I had a chance to speak to Sudhanshu Pandey, Secretary Food and Public Distribution, and he was in the same seminar where I was also speaking. So I asked him that you are the food man of India. What are you doing? Because we have been talking. He says, Mr. Malik, we have one thing we are now trying is to make MSP not on season basis, but give a 3-year or 5-year term for an MSP. That is one thing that they are thinking, and I think that will be a big move by the government to have a 5-year plan of MSP. So if I know as a farmer 5-year MSP of mustard seed, then I might shift my cropping pattern. Second, industry will also go in that and put up more investment in infrastructure and processing, because only making seed will not help you. So people like us have to invest in processing capacities to match the increase in output of seed. Now, I also asked him that unless and until Punjab and Haryana joins this, you will not be independent of growing more, and India will still be dependent. Then he said, yes, this year we have given only 3% increase in wheat, whereas more than 6% we are giving in mustard. And we will continue to jack up the mustard prices as compared to wheat, and trying to pursue the farmers of Punjab and Haryana to grow more mustard during this season of Rabi, the coming season of Rabi. And I'm sure the government will push. If that happens, let me tell you, if Punjab and Haryana farmers start diverting wheat crop to mustard, India will get at least 15 lakh to 20 lakh tons of edible oil more, which will reduce your import burden by at least 25%. So we will be in that 40-45% import, 60-65% domestic. That will be the best thing that India can do. So mustard oil is the future oil of India. People with brands, mustard oil brands, will do definitely better. And COVID has also shown us that mustard oil has the highest demand. Mustard and rice bran was the highest in demand oil because these have great value and immunity boosters. So people were preferring this. So from industry point of view, I think there is a lot of things that is happening. Refined oil will not come in India. I'm sure refined olein was the biggest troublemaker for us because anybody could bring in, and people who have put in industry were just watching. So I think that is a big support that the government has given, and this Atmanirbhar and becoming more self, and we have to be on our own. That philosophy has gone down with everyone, and bureaucrats have understood that we have to protect the Indian industry. So refined oil will not come. That is what we think so. So these two things will be the big game changers in edible oil industry, and I am sure things will be much better.
Thank you, sir. Now I will ask Mr. Darpan Vasishtha to tell about the industry scenario and what you feel about the outlook.
Right. So as Mr. Malik also said, for any country, and especially a developing country like ours, which can have better usages of our foreign exchange reserves, it's almost suicidal to have that kind of dependency on imports. So there is definitely a need. I would not want to put a timeline onto that because it's a gradual journey. Even where we have reached with the kind of yield improvements, with the kind of overall productivity improvements, with industry stepping in, we have not seen much change into the domestic market, right? Into the domestic thing. So it is going to be time consuming. It is going to be regulation led. There are a few enablers which need to come into place. It's not only for oil seeds, but primarily for all agriculture, producers. The problems that oil seeds face when it comes to the area under cultivation, when it comes to the yields that we are getting from the farm, or the kind of conversion yields which we are getting from when we process them. Those are not specific to oils only. They are specific to they are agri specific, and there I think overall market led sowing, market led harvesting, those need to come into place. Best of the India has this unique problem of having small farm holdings, so there is limited amount of mechanization which can go in. Within that, how do you improve outputs? How do you get irrigation facilities, drip irrigation, etc. across the farmers? How do we create consortiums of farmers over a period of time? With the new farm bills coming in place, there is a need and space for tech aggregators as well as large companies to tap into this opportunity, where the mandis or the commission agents have gone out of the picture, and try to ensure that we are both the farmer as well as industry are benefiting from this situation. There is no price carteling happening, so there is a need and space for those things. So overall farm productivity needs to go up. Overall the industrial productivity needs to go up. One thing that we have to be very, very conscious when we talk about oil business is that we end up generating a lot of byproducts or fractions. And for all oils, pretty much, whatever we want to develop, we need to have a developed market for all these fractions also in place. So whether it is the de-oiled cake that we are taking out, whether it is the husk that we are taking out, whether it is just the where it is going, we'll have to figure out usages for that also. And that's where I think industry, government, regulators, and other people, and maybe some technical institutes also need to join hands, because one of the big things, and that spikes up the end the end cost for oil produce also, is what do we do with the byproduct that comes out? What do we do with the as Mr. Malik also talked about that, so we have to develop not only exports market for that, but within India we have to find sources for that, so that liquidation for these DOCs for those husk etc is easier, profitable, and that also results into better yields for the industry. So these are enablers which need to come into place. Definitely there is a need to do that. There is a burning need to do that. I would say that with that kind of import bill, we need to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Vashisht. My next question to Anshu Malik. Sir, you have told that we need to reduce the import dependency, and import dependency you love to see at 45%, 45 and 55. So that means we will be achieving a partial Atmanirbhar or something like that. So I just want to know that whether it is fully possible to replace the entire 15 million ton we import. Definitely the time period will be there, but or it will be that it will be a blend of 30-70 or 45-50 55, because still we are not been telling Atmanirbhar, partial Atmanirbhar we are talking about it. So if you can highlight about it, sir.
See, the message of Atmanirbhar was never that we will be 100% in anything, not edible oil, but any activity that we do. How much we can be more and more self-producing nation is more important. So one step, as we heard, that it is not easy to just manufacture agriculture product, because there are so many other factors involved. But one step towards this is that you reduce dependence at least by 10% in the next 2 years, then another 10% by another 2 years, and still continue with some imports, because see, some imports are good for the nation, because palmolene is very cheap, and it is the cheapest oil, and cost of raising palmolene is cheaper. But you cannot do that in India so much. In India, we have only hardly 3 lakh hectares. No, in palmolene, palm plantation. It's very small, 3 lakh hectares. 3 lakh hectares, and they are planning another 3 or 5. But we need to do so many things on palm. So one step at a time is good enough, because matching production capacity is required. It's not that only you produce seed, what you do with the seed. So in mustard, when you produce that much seed, you need a backup of processing capacities. So I think Punjab and Haryana are the two places where we have excess wheat and we have short of edible oil. Now both are Rabi crop. So can we exchange wheat and make mustard? See, that is what is being talked at the government level. We as industry body have said the best way to do is bring Punjab and Haryana in this game of making mustard seed, growing mustard, and instead of wheat, and give them compensation, because wheat gives them assured purchase. So they have MSP, they know government will buy everything. Mustard, who will buy? So government has to do something of buying them, and I am sure this will happen. Even if this happens, let me tell you, we will be doing much better, because our history says we have grown at only hardly 1.5 to 2% in agri oilseed production. So I think one step at a time will be a better thing to do.
So basically, whatever you are telling, that we are targeting at a 15% reduction for a period of 5 years.
Yes, that is what by 2025, the Solvent Extraction Association has given a separate letter to the government saying that we should be reducing our imports by 15 to 20% if you go with our recommendations. And one of the recommendation was to bring wheat area under mustard by asking the Punjab Haryana farmers to divert cropping pattern.
Correct. And my question to Mr. Darpan Vasishtha, sir, actually, Sarah has told that mustard is the leading oilseed who is going to reduce our import dependency. But is there next to mustard, what will be the preference? Because mustard is consumed definitely a major portion of the population. But in the south, you cannot, even if you produce mustard as the south, you cannot push mustard. And also, so it has a certain markets also. Definitely market is huge for mustards. In eastern side, we from Calcutta also we use the mustard. So what we are saying that balance approach means only mustard is mustard will be reducing the import dependency. But what are the other oilseeds which you feel also will be taking developed so that we can reduce the import dependency?
Right. See, first of all, what we need to be very, very conscious of is that oil at the end of the day is part of our food basket, and food habits and oil is an essential part of those. These happen, they form over generations. They don't happen overnight. There are certain times when, driven by over a longer period of time, there are certain oils which will gain traction, which will maybe driven by sense of economies. Why palm has become so large, because of the kind of yields that we see into that space over a period of time. So palm, maybe 50 years back it was not so large, or maybe 100 years back it was not so large in India. There were indigenous crops in India which were converted into edible oils. I think and it would be quite tough to change food habits or the Epicurean needs of people overnight. I think it will be a chicken and egg story. I think as we go forward, we'll have to tap into regional needs. I think some of the prime candidates for this kind of self-sufficiency, we are already sufficient in those places, but these oils can be replacers for other oils. Maybe rice bran can be one good example. Expensive oils, like maybe flaxseed, etc., they can also gain share. We are already, in many of these oils, we are already serving 100% need. But as we grow the scale, rice bran is a prime candidate which comes from a market. There could be other, what you could say, the native crops that we are doing, and we may be able to get, we may be getting what you can say oil product from those even right now also, or we may have to develop market for those. One very small fraction, for example, one very small sliver of the market, for example, is the overall trees and forest produce. That could be one enabler. It may not directly go into house consumption, but that may be something which can at least compensate some of the needs of the industrial buyers. So I think the ask would be to go regional, look into what kind of food preferences people have, what are the crops which have a resonance there. Palm, just because the size that it has and the kind of demand side pull that it has, palm could also be a good option. So I would say that overall rice bran and palm, because of different reasons, these are two other candidates other than mustard for increasing the share of domestic consumption. And then there could be other soft oils also, or specific need oil, need oils also. Because one thing that we also should be mindful of is that these special oils, when you import them, we pay even more premium onto them. So getting them in terms of volume maybe a smaller number, but in terms of value, that might be helpful for industrial and end consumers. The other thing that again very interesting is that government has a has an unenviable task of reducing the dependence on imports. It also has that task of managing inflation. It also has that task of ensuring that the common man gets oil as he wants. Creating artificial barriers can suddenly give spikes in the market on prices, and I think that kind of demand disruption or that kind of demand change nobody would want to happen, because that is something which may lead into deflation of the market. So as a net buyer, as a net buying nation, as a nation whose consumption is only growing up, the fine balance of creating that domestic framework, creating that marketplace for oil seeds to grow more, and alongside it balancing the calorie needs, balancing the nutrition needs, balancing the taste needs of end customers. That is a fine balance which industry and government will have to work through.
Right, sir. Right, sir. Sir, my next question to Mr. Malik, that whether new farm bill would encourage the private players to invest in the audible oil sector, especially in the backward linkages, namely farming activities.
The new farm bill of contract farming that has come will help in certain crops where you require them on a special requirement basis, like say not as much as in oilseed, as much as in other fruits or vegetables or even potatoes. If I want the farmers to grow a particular variety of potato or basmati rice, which is pesticide free or something, so that I can export to Europe, then it's okay. But as far as mustard seed is concerned, we are not going for any contract farming. Yes, we are going for direct mandi purchase or direct factory purchase, and no need for APMC. Otherwise also APMC is not that it is dismantled, it is there, it will do its job, but you can also buy directly from the farmers. So we have started working on that front, and we are buying from the farmers. Earlier also our factories were all mandi licensed, but we had to pay the APMC tax. Now we don't have to pay, we can buy directly from the farmers or aggregators or FPOs. So what you're calling. So we are in touch with a lot of FPOs in Madhya Pradesh for the soybean crop that is going to come now. We are also in touch with them for basmati rice, paddy buying. So like this, we will be working on. So to that extent, yes, it will be a benefit to the industry to directly deal with the FPOs and work. But as far as growing special crop is concerned, I don't think these type of crops would require any arrangement of contract farming or something. In palm, yes, palm cultivation, they are thinking of it.
Correct. Sir, but don't you think that it will bring efficiency in procurement, cost reduction, so ultimately it will be passed on to the consumer?
Yes, yes. See, already I am telling you in basmati rice, APMC, they have reduced from 4% to 2%. In Haryana, it is reduced from 4% to 1%. So now APMC is only 1% tax. Outside APMC is 0. So now you have to evaluate many times. Our factory may be very close to APMC yard. So it is better to buy from APMC because my freight is less. Otherwise, I have to buy from the farmers who is very near to us. So now APMC also, government also have to reduce the taxes and made it very competitive. But yes, buying outside will help. All this, you see, all the benefits that will come will go in two ways. One, passing on to the consumer is definitely there because you have to be competitive, and others will try to reduce it. And second is the farmers would try to gain because they would get at least 30-40% of the reduction in the taxes that we pay. So obviously the paddy prices or the soybean prices will go up. In wheat, we have seen that We have bought it at a cheaper by around 2%. But the same we have passed on to the consumers because the wheat prices have come down. So, so end of the day, you have to be efficient in your own processing. You can't just pocket all this money and still be competitive. You cannot.
Right.
Efficiency
Sir,
in our system has to be there.
Correct, sir. Definitely, efficiency is the last word. Mr. Vasishtha, sir, what is your comment regarding this new enactment, farm bills? How do industry will be benefited as per you?
See, I think there are a few steps to be taken before we start seeing the full potential of these changes. Wherever there are specific needs of industry, where there already are farming practices in place, one of my earlier, two of my earlier employers, I have seen contract farming of cocoa and potato quite up close and personal. So where there are these frameworks in place, where their awareness is there on the industry side also, and awareness is with the farmer also, I think things will be easier. But when it comes to generic cropping, when it comes to overall cropping, still some framework needs to come into place. So APMCs are not going out of vogue, but the key thing is that I think what this does is that it opens up a, as I said earlier, also space for tech aggregators. It creates a space for industry. It creates a space for other bodies, etc., to come together and figure out how do we harness the benefits out of this. Because suddenly the margin and the speculative part, which let's say was going to commission agents or to artiyas, etc., that becomes available. And in a wafer thin commodity market, that can be a big plus to both the grower as well as to the converter, and maybe eventually to the end consumer also. So yes, over a period of time, it should be beneficial on certain crops, but we need those enablers to come into play. Some people are poised better to take advantage of that. Some sectors will have to work harder for that. I think in oilseed, it will be tough to harness that in the initial times, but I'm sure that we will figure out a way to leverage that.
Right, sir. Sir, my next question to Mr. Malik, sir, impact of the recent ban on blending of mustard oil with any other with effect from October 1. So how does it, you can highlight about it?
It's a great move by government after a long time. See, what was happening was that when there was blending of mustard oil, the mustard oil prices were artificially pushed lower because the blending was with cheaper oil. Now, so the prices of mustard oil was going down. Means overall, it was pushing down the prices. Consumers always felt it is mustard oil, so they were buying as if it is a mustard oil. They were not knowing so much that it's a blended oil, and mostly going to the rural markets. And now that this has stopped, so there will be only pure mustard oil available in the market unless you do it not legally. Earlier it was legally allowed, so it was being done. Now mustard oil prices will go up. Farmers will get higher price of seed because now the seed prices have also gone up. Mustard seed prices going up means more and more farmers would like to now sow mustard. So that is another good incentive to the mustard farmer. Consumers who are getting a blended oil in the name of mustard oil will not get that. They will get pure mustard oil, but they'll have to pay a little more. And there will be rice bran oil now available in the country, which was actually going for blending. This rice bran oil is a premium oil, but this was not physical refined, it was chemical refined, so it was cheaper. So now rice bran oil will be available in the country, and I'm sure rice bran oil itself is a good oil. So one will try to market this rice bran oil, and both the oil will grow on its own. Mustard oil will definitely do well. We are very positive on this move.
Sir, this move is very good, but one thing is that if the mustard oil price is going up, so there will be a tendency to shift to the low price oil like palm oil or something like that. So will the consumption of mustard oil
this is the
go down?
taste oil. This is the taste oil. Taste oil, generally people don't compromise with refined oils. People see at 125 rupees, it is still selling higher than other refined oil. Let me tell you. Now,
yes,
why?
Yes.
That is because people who know the taste of mustard doesn't want to divert it. One. They may reduce the consumption from 5 liters to 4 liters, but you cannot take away the mustard taste. So in Punjab, Haryana, Rajasthan, or Bengal, these are the places where they eat mustard oil. So they consume it because of the taste. So they need it. I don't think that will be a problem.
That's true. That's true, sir. And sir, my question to Mr. Vasishtha, sir, impact of the recent ban of sale of loose cooking oil. So how do you see it? How?
See, I think it's again a good move. What it does is, the ban has always been in existence. It is now
Yes.
the adoption of that, or reiteration of that, which has been done by the ministry. It is both. It's a plus both for the consumer as well as for the industry, because what it does that it protects the customer from food safety hazards, consumer from the food safety hazards, and it also protects industry, which has put in a lot of money and infrastructure into creating safe and trustable brands, and from unscrupulous let's say practices. So I think it's net positive, a good move. This move should be read more in conjunction with how how the regulators are viewing
Correct.
human
Correct.
health over anything else.
It was always there, actually. It was always there, but nobody was implementing it. See, second-hand tin, use of old tin is also not allowed. But there are markets where only second-hand tin sells. So actually the implementing is the state, whereas the policy drivers is food safety Delhi. So they have always designed it like that, but states have been little relaxed in implementing it.
But sir, if you see that the plastic container of your company, you cannot reuse it for again. You have to pack it in a new container. So, what is the reason for not permitting you to reuse your own container also?
No, see, in food safety, we have to use virgin plastic material for packing edible oil, and it is very clearly stipulated. We cannot use even regrinded material for making containers. So it has to be virgin HDP. Food grade plastic, no, virgin food grade plastic. Means the food grade plastic can still be if you recycle it, but you don't make it like that. So they have to be virgin, one. And two, we as a manufacturer have this EPR, what you call it. So we have to take back the plastic from the market and recycle it, and we have to do it as part of the pollution control. Extended producers' responsibility, we all fall in it. So we have a responsibility to pick up the plastic that we put in the market.
Correct. Sir, in one word, sir, so far we have discussed more or less the industry. So in one word, you can say, put forward what is the outlook. First, you and then Mr. Vasishtha. Outlook and future of this industry.
See, one, that it is an essential commodity. Consumption will continue to grow. COVID is one little bit of dampener, but doesn't matter. It's a question of 1 year. After that, again, we will all be celebrating marriages, and everybody will celebrate birthday and parties. So we will be back in action again. So edible oil is a basic food requirement or ingredient. So we will continue to grow. Population is growing at 1.5%, and consumption is growing at around 2.5–3%. So around 4–4.5% is our rough thumb rule at which edible oil consumption will continue to grow. One, there is a shift from loose to packed at the rate. Packed oil is growing at the rate of around 11%. So against 4% of total growth, 10%, 11% is growth of consumer pack. So loose oil is reducing. Two, people are shifting to brand. Third, they are premiumization in the brand, where they are seeking for value, and brands are building value. So consumers want better brands. That is happening. And packed is selling against the so-called loose or the semi-packed, what the retailers give in their own containers or own poly packs or something. So these are the changes that is happening. These changes will continue to happen, and edible oil industry will continue to grow. And brands which are consistent and honest to their consumers will definitely do well. As
Thank you, sir.
education and health consciousness rises, people will continue to shift towards basic oil to healthier oil.
Thank you, sir.
Right.
Mr. Vasishtha, can you summarize?
Right. So in short to mid-term, while there might be might have seen a hiccup because of this C-19 and lockdown situation and temporary tertiary demand decline. But over a period of time, in fact, in your presentation also, you covered that the per capita consumption of edible oil is still, at about 60 index to global consumption. So there is headroom for growth at per capita consumption level itself. There is a headroom for growth from a population increase perspective. There is a headroom for definitely this conversion to branded goods is not happening only in oil. It has happened across other categories also, and that is a trend that we have seen it happening in biscuits, we have seen it happening in cakes, we have seen it happening in so many other markets also. And that is what snacks, I mean savory snacks, we have seen that over the last 20-30 years. So I think that is something which will happen in case of edible oil also. What that will help is I think overall the bouquet of products which comes out from industry will go up. I think the number of oils that we might be dealing in will may be higher, because we may be catering to different health needs, we may be catering to different kind of regulatory needs and so on and so forth. Overall margins should increase for this industry as it becomes more consolidated, as it becomes more structured, and so outlook I would say is robust. This is one industry on which you can continue to bet, because oil will never go out of fashion.
Positive elasticity. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So, sir, we are through with our discussion. So now question and answer session will begin. So over to Mridul.
Yeah, thank you, Arindam, and sir, for your insightful discussion. Dear participants, we have some time for taking your queries. You're please requested to key in your questions if you have any. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mridul. I think we have got quite a few queries. First one is from Mr. Ali Muhammad. He has two queries. He wants to know TCS effective from 1st October, what will be the impact on refiners' liquidity? And why can't we have edible oil reserve like food grain reserve? So,
Mr. Malik, please.
Yeah, Mr.
We want to hear from both of you.
We don't have edible oil reserve like food reserve is because edible oil has never been bought or kept in reserve, except that sometime the NABARD, this NAFED enters and buys some amount of mustard seed. But that mustard seed is mostly from the trading purpose, not from any inventory like wheat or rice or anything. FCI is not a buyer here. So edible oil is never pursued in those terms. The moment government starts thinking about it, they will build reserves. Like China has edible oil reserve. India does not have edible oil reserve because it's free to import and everybody is importing, so the government doesn't interfere. As far as the TCS is concerned, I don't think should be great, but a finance person can talk about it better.
Mr. Vasishtha.
No, so TCS will have a very limited impact because at the end of the day there is a value threshold cutoff also, and I think all the large players are well capable of managing that kind of accruals or payouts, etc. So I don't think that's going to be such a large issue. I think it's a question of supply and demand and the kind of volatility that one sees. That's why we don't have oil reserves so to speak of, and it's a moot point whether we actually want to go into that direction or not. So I would leave it at that.
Okay.
Next question is from Mr. Pandey. He says to Mr. Malik, sir, we know that mustard oil and rice bran oil are better for health and we are good in production also. Why these have not been given importance till now? Why refined oil has been in the limelight all the time, despite the fact it is hazardous for health?
See, as far as rice bran oil is concerned, 2013 we launched rice bran oil first time in India, promoting it aggressively because we knew that there is a lot of health benefits. And the Fortune rice bran oil was the first to be promoted in India aggressively. In India, advertising and promotions is a costly affair, and looking into the volumes that you get is much lower. But still, we were confident that this oil will someday grow. It's not that it is not growing. Today also it's growing at double the speed of other oils. But the basket is small. So we also feel equally like you. I also feel why it should not do well when it is such a good oil and it has all the properties that one could ask for. In China, in Japan, it is called the heart oil. So it is so good, rice bran oil. And we have been promoting aggressively, and I am sure Kaman is also promoting aggressively. They also have a brand, Rizo rice bran oil. And the question is, we both have been trying it. It's not that they have also not tried. They have also done a lot of work. We are also doing a lot of work. Consumers, I don't know, somewhere this additional 10 rupees a liter makes them allergic to shift or not, I don't know. But I am still hopeful. I am doing a lot of work on it. And honestly speaking, I personally believe it is the best oil today in India. There cannot be better than rice bran oil. When it comes to mustard, it's another game altogether. Mustard is a taste oil driven by small manufacturers. Historically, there is more than 100 good brands of mustard oil in the country, more than 100. And they are in pockets. Suppose you go to Bihar, every district has one brand. But historically, that brand has been very, very strong because that owner of a mill in Rajasthan had a brother in Bihar who developed that brand, and for last 20 years they have been selling, and only that state is Panchi is one brand, Hiran is one brand, and then like this they will have all the brands. So national brands have not been able to garner all the volumes, but yes, 2-3 national brands have done quite well in the last 5-7 years. We have also been aggressively marketing our mustard oil because I feel in India mustard oil will be a big oil, and going forward people will shift to mustard oil because the cold press oil, it's a taste oil, it's a healthy oil, and in COVID we have seen that happen. So mustard oil, people will invest and people are investing, and I'm sure many brands will try to do it.
And one question is from Ronak. He's saying we have not talked much about coconut oil. Is the share not considerable given the food habits in South India?
Mr.
Coconut oil, yes, you have coconut oil.
So in the overall basket is still a small oil. So yes, and in oils, see one thing that the question which came earlier also, India does not have a monolithic consumer. We cannot categorize that this consumer, entire India is one consumer. There are regional preferences. There are socio-economic preferences. At the end of the day, pricing, there are customers who are willing to pay premium for better oils or for better products, and there are customers or consumers who will want to save, and with due respects, they would get into some bit of economics or value mindset. I think over a period of time, as India's per capita income goes up, as people become more aware of the health benefit of local oils, as the ability and the awareness both come into play, people will be investing more onto, and that demand as it generates will result into more supply also, because we do have a lot of coconut yield. I mean, coconut per se is not something which we are short of in India, but converting that into oil more and more, that will require that traction and demand to grow. So I think whether it's mustard, whether it is coconut, all the native oils that we are talking about, all the healthier oils that we are talking about, rice bran, maybe 20-30 years back people had not even heard of rice bran, but
Correct.
today, as people are getting more aware of that, and are getting aware that it's as Mr. Malik said, that this is the best oil, and I would also bet my money on that. So, but it takes an evolved, aware consumer to do that. It takes industry and government to promote and provide that kind of awareness and information. FSSAI, we, any other regulators need to work in tandem. there have to be fiscal incentives, etc., for these kinds of things to come into place. Maybe so all those things over a period of time, we'll see native oils, better oils, healthier oils, gain more share, and that's what happening. That is what is happening even right now as we speak. So I think coconut oil, the same story applies, because despite while it's it's an oil that has a lot of extreme reactions in terms of health benefits. Western science says some things, and Indians believe in the health properties of this oil. So I think the jury is still out, but I think regional oils will start gaining prominence as regional buying capacity or propensity increases, and as the consumer gets more aware. So that's what I would say.
Our next question is, the edible oil business is low margin business. So what can be the steps for improving the profitability?
If it is
Should I
asked to
go on
me,
that?
you can answer.
Sorry, Mr. Malik, please, after you.
See, my understanding is that people give a value when they understand that this oil is good for me, and brands talk about it and conveys that message. Any brand which is honest to itself and which remains honest to the product has consistently maintained their quality over the years, have gained acceptance by the consumers, and consumers start paying you once they know that you have been consistent in it. When the prices goes up, you don't overcharge, you are reasonable in terms of pricing. You see, its margin is okay, but too much, there are chances when you get too much money to make on a short-term basis. I think we should not do it if you want to keep the brand steady, and you have to create a steady platform of the brand, and consumers start getting attracted to it. Maintain your quality, maintain consistency, and you must speak to the consumers always. I was told by a advertising Piyush Pandey recently that, Malik, when nobody's talking, you must speak to your consumers. Don't worry about COVID. These are small things, but don't stop communicating with your consumers. And you would have seen us that during the lockdown, we were one of the more visible brands. That is because when consumers are there, you must speak to them, and we have maintained that. So that is how we have maintained the margins are always there. If you have to be efficient in your operations, you have to be efficient in your purchase, because see, commodity business means what? Logistics, risk management. These two things, if you have good control, purchase, then your business is definitely there. And as Rashid says, that there is upgradation, consumers are willing to pay you little more, not exorbitantly more, but definitely little more if you remain consistent in your performance.
To Mr. Vashishta, Mr. Albert wants to know, for a large player, does it make sense to have multiple plants at various geographies, or have a large scale single manufacturing location? What's the
in a very, yeah, it's I think the trade-off is very simple. See, as while there are attempts by industry players to dial up the value of the product proposition and the brand, which should take the industry multiples better, industry EBITDA better, but the fact remains that this segment, I mean edible oils, is a low profit segment. And the reason for that is that at the end of the day, consumer has an intuitive sense about the value that they are paying for the food. Okay, so there is a slow upgrade also, but typically when prices move sharply, there is significant amount of substitution and replacement also, or downgrade also. That's what we also see in food businesses, whether these are heavily processed segments or whether these are less processed segments like edible oils. Now the thing is that in that case where your margins are thin, it's better to have a scattered supply chain closer to the source seed, rather than having a monolithic factory at one place. Largely, I mean, it's broad. I mean, there are no thumb rules, there is no science around that, but broadly, because of thin margins, because of the kind of hyper competitiveness in this market, because of the value consciousness of the end consumer, it's better to have a scattered what you would say supply network. So more plants rather than less plants.
See, we follow here a simple thing that you must be present in every price point, because there is a high-end consumer, there is a low-end consumer. India is a very big nation. So every price point you must have a product. You must have a range of oil in your basket, because you have seen many times one or two oils don't work. So you cannot be only one or two oil. You have to have a basket of oil. India is such a vast country where coconut oil is also in demand, and rice bran is there, sunflower is there, mustard is there. So you must have a basket. And third is to have spread out of your manufacturing location, because imported CIF of palm oil in all the ports in India is almost same. Now, suppose you have only one factory in Mundra and then you want to take it to east, you cannot survive. So you need a factory in Haldia, you need a factory in Mundra, Kandla, you need a factory somewhere around JNPT and Azira, you need one in Mangalore, one in Kakinada, because then your cost, landed cost is almost same across the country, but from there you find it easier to meet your thing. That is why supply chain cost is one of the most critical cost in this commodity business.
Okay, I think we have many questions. We'll just take one last. Bhagyashree wants to know that around why there is so much of refined edible oil capacity when utilization has remained low, capacity utilization.
You will answer,
Mr.
Vasis or Malik? Okay, Bhagyashree, you have asked a very good question. Let me tell you honestly, all these days, Olein were allowed to be imported and CPO was coming less, and you have seen around 18% to 20% Olein was imported. Now that Olein import has stopped, all the refineries, those who are having processing capacity for crude palm oil, their refining capacities are going up. And I think from a 30-35% average industry, it will go up to 60-65%. Soft oil capacities are already being running at 75 to 80%. So I think the industry will be short of capacity of soft oil after 2 years. If there is no other investments done, soft oil will definitely run out of capacities. Palm will continue for 3 years, according to us.
Mr. Vashishtha, would you
Thank
like
you,
to
sir.
add something to this?
Yeah.
No, I think the same
Sorry.
thing. Sorry. So one is the same thing that there was this temporary gap between because of this refined oil coming from outside. There was this thing, but I think over time that will improve. The other thing is that I think that's the larger point out here, that we have seen that blip happening within this year, and as we progress, that will only improve. Putting up refinery in itself does not require so much hard capex also, and typically you would plan any good producer would plan for some significant what you can say future. So I think if we are at 60-65 utilization right now at an industry level, we should expect that next 3 to 5 years, if there are no capacity additions or if there is no demand slack, which will not happen by far, I think we should be able to get to that space where we see more investments coming into refinery.
Sir, one question. Just 1 minute.
Yeah.
Sir, one thing that the import restriction is on RBD is going to continue. RBD palm oil restriction.
Yes. Lot of debate has happened. Bureaucrats are now very clear that India plants must run better than Malaysia and Indonesia factories, and there is no point in running their plants and starving our things. So bureaucrats have understood, and this notification that has come is after a lot of debate, and it will continue. We are confident about it.
So duty differential, what will be out of the dictionary?
No, if it doesn't come, there is no problem in duty differential.
Right.
If you don't allow RBD Olein, then how does it matter what is the duty?
Yes, it will be a matter of past then. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So over to Madhul. We are through with it. Madhul.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you again to our esteemed guest speakers, Mr. Malik, Mr. Vaishya. It was great listening to you and being on the panel. Thank you, Richa, Arinandam, and to all the participants for taking the time out and being part of this Care Ratings webinar. We hope the discussion was insightful and look forward to your participation in future also. For any further queries, feedback, or suggestion, you are please welcome to write us in the comment box, which will be coming no sooner the webinar ends. Thank you and goodbye for now.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.